morning, students. So I'm Mrs. Agatha Janssen van Rensburg, and I'm your tutor for Bes Eng32, and we will be discussing some content for next year's exams. Please use the slides as a guideline, but also you go through your manuals for the subject. Yes, let's start. So, first of all, we need to know what's the difference between a clause and a phrase. I will probably ask you to just give a definition for the two. The clause is a part of a sentence that contains a subject that actively performs an action. A phrase is a part of a clause or a sentence. As against, a clause is a sentence fragment. A clause has a subject and predicate, whereas a phrase doesn't. A phrase cannot stand alone as it does not convey a meaning. In contrast, a clause is a standalone statement which conveys a thought and an idea. You might have to also identify a clause in a sentence or a phrase in a sentence so that we can see your clear understanding. What are dependent and independent clauses? A dependent clause is a group of words that also contain a subject and a verb, but it is not a complete thought. Because it is not a complete thought, a dependent clause cannot stand on its own as a sentence. It is dependent on being attached to an independent clause to form a sentence. The words should give it away. Dependent, if you're dependent, you need something. If you're independent, you can do your things on your own. So if you see independent, you know it can stand alone. If you see dependent, you know that it needs help. It cannot be on its own. So an independent clause is a clause that can stand alone as a sentence. For example, it expresses a complete thought. By giving an independent clause, you would know exactly what's going on. You don't need more information to get clearer understanding. When there are no dependent clauses in the same sentence as the independent clause is a simple sentence. For example, I like coconut macaroons. Okay. Please know the difference between a noun clause and an adjective clause. A noun clause is a dependent clause that functions as a noun. It also functions as a noun. It can act as the subject, object, and the subject complement. Noun clauses are not written with commas. An adjective clause is a dependent clause that functions as an adjective. Adjective clause functions as an adjective and modifies the noun. Adjective clauses are sometimes set off by commas because it gives additional information. Apositives. An apositive is a noun or a noun phrase that sits next to another noun to rename it or to describe it in another way. Here are some examples of apositives. Don't leave your shoes there, or my dog, Ollie, will munch them. In this example, the apositive is Ollie. It is in a position, as it is called, to my dog. My best friend Lee caught a whelk when he was fishing for bass. In this example, the apositive is Lee. It is in a position to my best friend. Dr. Pat, the creator of the turnip brew, sold 8 barrels on the first day. In this example, the apositive is the creator of the turnip brew, and it's in position to Dr. Pat. This question might not count a lot of marks. You might have to just give a description of what an apositive is and give one example to make sure that you understand clearly what it is. Then you need to know what simple, compound, and complex sentences are. I might ask you to make a comparison between the three, and this could count 10 to 15 marks with your examples. So you will have to describe the 3 different sentences. So a simple sentence has the most basic elements that make it a sentence: a subject, a verb, and a completed thought. Mary and Samantha took the bus. Mary and Samantha are compound subject, and took is the verb. So it's very simple, very basic. A compound sentence, on the other hand, refers to a sentence made up of 2 independent clauses or complete sentences connected to one another with a coordinating conjunction. Mary and Samantha arrived at the bus station before noon, and they left on the bus before I arrived. So that's a compound sentence. And then a complex sentence is made of an independent clause and one or more dependent clauses connected to it. A dependent clause is similar to an independent clause or a complete sentence, but it lacks one of the elements that would make it a complete sentence. Because Mary and Samantha arrived at the bus station before noon, a complex sentence joins an independent clause with one or more dependent clauses. Because Mary and Samantha arrived at the bus station before noon, I did not see them at the station. And there you have your complex sentence. So, yeah, focus on actually making a comparison between the three. Okay, I'm pretty sure I definitely would ask this as a question to give a sentence definition, and I bullet pointed it for you to make it very easy. A sentence is a set of words that is complete in itself. It typically contains a subject and a predicate. It conveys a statement, a question, an exclamation, or a command. That third bullet point actually focuses on what type of sentence it is. It consists of a main clause and possibly one or more subordinate clauses. It is the largest independent unit of grammar. Begins with a capital letter and ends with a full stop, question mark, or an exclamation mark. Traditionally defined as a word or group of words that expresses a complete idea, and that includes a subject and a verb. So there it's all divided up for you to give you the proper definition of a sentence. And this could typically be 8 marks. Okay, what's the difference between a subject and a predicate? Understanding subject and predicate is the key to good sentence writing. The subject of a complete sentence is who or what the sentence is about, and the predicate tells about that subject. The dog ran. The dog is the subject of the sentence because the sentence is telling something about that dog. And what is he telling? It says that the dog ran. So in this example, the subject is dog and the predicate is ran. And I did put pictures here because then you will remember these examples. General rules regarding prepositions. Prepositions is allowed to end a sentence. It is allowed to end a sentence with a preposition. For example, the dress had not even been paid for, full stop. It sounds fine. It gives you the complete idea. You can use it like that. A preposition is followed by a noun. Nobody seems to have responsibility for the budget. A preposition is never followed by a verb. She was hiding under the table. So hiding comes before that because that's the action word. It is allowed to begin a sentence with a preposition or a prepositional phrase, but be very careful when you do so. On Monday, we will begin the new program. The subject of the sentence can never be part of a prepositional phrase. A verb can never be part of a prepositional phrase. What is a paragraph? A paragraph is a collection of related sentences dealing with a single topic. It will help you as a writer stay on track during your drafting and revision stages. It assists your readers in following a piece of writing. You can have fantastic ideas, but if those ideas aren't presented in an organized fashion, you will lose your readers and fail to achieve your goals in writing. You need to know these bullet points. Okay. This could possibly be a question where you will have to analyze and express your ideas here in your own writing. You will have to list the elements of a paragraph, and then you will have to give examples and explain it. And this could be a question that could count close to 15, 20 marks. So the first element of a paragraph is unity. Unity in a paragraph begins with the topic sentence. Every paragraph has one single controlling idea that is expressed in its topic sentence, which is typically the first sentence of the paragraph. A paragraph is unified around this main idea, with the supporting sentences providing detail and discussion. In order to write a good topic sentence, think about your theme and all the points you want to make. Decide which point drives the rest and then write it as your topic sentence. Second element would be order. Order refers to the way you organize your supporting sentences. Whether you choose chronological order, order of importance, or another logical presentation of detail, a solid paragraph always has a definite organization. In a well-ordered paragraph, the reader follows along easily, aided by the pattern you've established. Order helps the reader grasp your meaning and avoid confusion. Coherence is the third element. Coherence is the quality that makes your writing understandable. Sentences within a paragraph need to connect to each other and work together as a whole. One of the best ways to achieve coherency is to use transition words. These words create bridges from one sentence to the next. You can use transition words that show order, first, second, third, spatial relationships, above, below, or logical, furthermore, in addition, in fact. Also, in writing a paragraph, using a consistent verb tense and point of view are important ingredients of coherency. Then, completeness. Completeness means a paragraph is well developed. If all sentences clearly or sufficiently support the main idea, then your paragraph is complete. If there are not enough sentences or enough information to prove your thesis, then the paragraph is incomplete. Usually 3 supporting sentences, in addition to a topic sentence and concluding sentence, are needed for a paragraph to be complete. The concluding sentence or last sentence of the paragraph should summarize your main idea by reinforcing your topic sentence. Yes, these are very important, and especially for when you also do your own writing, so this is very good to know. Then we need to know what's the difference between active and passive voice. And I place them next to each other with examples so that you can make a comparison. Active voice refers to that type of voice wherein the subject carries out the action designated by the verb. Where passive voice is a kind of voice wherein the subject acts as the recipient of the action. The active voice acts upon the verb. Passive voice are acted upon by the verb. Active voice has the subject. As the subject is responsible for the action, it appears at the first place. For example, I am playing cricket, and I am would be the subject. Cricket is being played by me would then be the passive voice. She sent an email to the human resource manager. An email was sent by her to the human resource manager. So there's the difference. For exam purposes, I would say you need to either identify different sentences and say whether they're passive or active voice, or I could say change the passive voice to active voice or change the active voice to passive voice. Different way. And this might count 5 to 10 marks in the exam. What's the difference between direct and indirect speech? Direct speech is a sentence in which the exact words spoken are reproduced in speech marks, also known as quotation marks or inverted commas. For example, "You'll never guess what I've seen," said Sam excitedly. "You'll never guess what I've seen" is the actual words that he said, and those are then put into quotation marks. "What's that?" asked Louise. So the words that Louise actually said is placed in quotation marks, and that's called direct speech. Indirect speech is when the general points of what someone has said or reported without actually writing the speech out in full. It is sometimes called reported speech. For example, Sam was excited to see a broomstick and a black pointy hat in the back of his teacher's car. He told his friend Louise about this and that he thought their teacher might be a witch. Might be. Okay, what are the general rules regarding direct speech? This slide might be necessary for you to kind of memorize here, because this would be just recalling the rules. Each new character speech starts on a new line. Speech is opened with speech marks. Each line of speech starts with a capital letter. The line of speech ends with a comma, exclamation mark, or a question mark. A reporting clause is used at the end. Said Jane, shouted Paul, replied Mom. A full stop goes after the reporting clause. If the direct speech in the sentence is broken up by information about who is speaking, add in a comma or question mark or exclamation mark to end the first piece of speech, and a full stop or another comma before the second piece, before the speech marks. For example, "It's lovely," she sighed, comma. Then again, speech marks. "But I can't afford it right now." Do you see how you have to separate those because it's not part of the directed speech? Okay, now we're getting to the section I like the most. What is denotation? It generally defined as literary or dictionary meanings of a word in contrast to its connotative or associated meanings. For example, if you search for the meaning of the word dove in a dictionary, you will see that its meaning is a type of pigeon or a wild and domesticated bird having a heavy body and short legs. In literature, however, you frequently see dove referred to as the symbol of peace. So that's why I've added that white dove there so that you can remember it. Okay, you will have to give a comparison or make it differentiate between irony and sarcasm. Seeing that they are kind of closely tied, you need to know what the differences are. For irony, the definition of irony is the use of words where the meaning is the opposite of their usual meaning or what is expected to happen. A method of humorous or subtle sarcastic expression in which the intended meaning of the words is the direct opposite of their usual sense. The irony of calling a stupid plan clever. Okay, an example of irony is someone who talks a lot having nothing to say when asked a question. An example of irony is a whaling ship being used to save marine animals after a tsunami. Okay, so that's irony. Sarcasm. A cutting, often ironic remark intended to express contempt or ridicule. A form of wit characterized by the use of such remarks. Detected a hint of sarcasm in his voice. If someone can see you are plainly sick with a cold and they ask how you are feeling and you rudely comment, never better. This is an example of sarcasm. Okay. Yeah, you will have to maybe give your own examples for sarcasm and irony, and maybe also give examples where it's being used in literature. What is the function of personification? It gives deeper meaning to the literary text. It adds vividness to expressions, as we always look at the world from a human perspective. It brings inanimate things to life so that their nature and actions are understood in a better way, because us humans relate better if they are the same. So if it's a non-living thing, given human qualities, then obviously we will relate better. It is easier for us to relate to something that is human or possess human traits. It encourages us to develop a perspective that is new as well as creative. Some examples are the stars danced playfully in the moonlit sky, the popcorn leaped out of the bowl. There are so many examples of personification, and you can make your own as well, as long as you give a non-human thing human qualities. The trees were clapping their hands. The sun was smiling down upon us. So there are plenty. Be careful though. I've seen in previous exams that when I do give a question, and usually those are 10 mark questions, I would say identify the type of literary device or poetic device being used in the examples. Many overlap, so there could be personification that could also be metaphor or a simile or something like that. Be careful that you know the differences. Okay, then you need to know what is dramatic and situational irony. Dramatic irony, irony that is inherent in speech or situation of a drama and is understood by the audience but not grasped by the characters in the play. For example, two people are engaged to be married, but the audience knows that the man is planning to run away with another woman. In a scary movie, the character walks into a house and the audience knows the killer is in the house, but the actual actor doesn't know that. Situational irony is a literary device that you can easily identify in literary works. Simply, it occurs when incongruity appears between expectations of something to happen and what actually happens instead. For example, Ralph wakes up late and thinks he is going to be late to go to school. After rushing around to get dressed, he realizes it is Saturday. This could also be a question for about 10 marks. and you would have to kind of differentiate or make a comparison between the two with examples. Then we get 7 types of sarcasm. This question would just be recalling. I would ask you to list the 7 types of sarcasm and give a short description for each. So the different types are self-deprecating sarcasm, and that's an overstated sense of inferiority and worthlessness. Brooding sarcasm, the speaker utters something polite, however the tone of his speech has a marked bitterness. Deadpan sarcasm, it is expressed without emotion or laughter, making it difficult for the listener to judge whether the speaker is joking or mocking. Polite sarcasm, a speaker is said to have delivered a polite sarcasm when his listeners only get to realize that his kind remark was a sarcastic one after they had given it some thought. Obnoxious sarcasm makes people feel like punching the speaker in the face. It is not very funny and it gets under your skin. And manic sarcasm, this type of sarcasm is delivered in an unnatural, happy mood that it makes the speaker look like he is going crazy. And raging sarcasm, this kind of sarcasm relies mainly on exaggeration and violent threats. So yes, recalling and memorizing the 7 types of sarcasm. Okay, the purpose of the epigram used in poetry. Clearly, the reasons for using epigrams are plentiful. Here are a few. They cause the reader or listener to think a bit more about the statement being made. They are examples of pure humor. They all leave an impression. Many of them, whether through humor or blatant statements, are making a commentary on some sort of issue, whether it be political, social, religious, or just about day-to-day life. For example, I can resist everything but temptation. That's a good, and I like this example. So yes, please go through the epigram in your manual. Just make sure you know what it's used for, what the functions are, and to give a short description. Understanding metaphor. A metaphor is a figure of speech that describes an object or action in a way that it's literally true, but helps explain an idea or make a comparison. Here are the basics. A metaphor states that one thing is another thing. It equates those two things not because they actually are the same, but for the sake of comparison or symbolism. If you take a metaphor literally, it will probably sound very strange. Are there actually any sheep, black or otherwise, in your family? Like, for example, the example would be, I'm the black sheep of the family. Are there any of those? No. But it means that you always get in trouble, you get the least, and you are always lastly looked after, and yeah, that examples. Metaphors are used in poetry, literature, and anytime someone wants to add some color to their language. And examples of metaphors are, love is a battlefield and you are an angel. It's a direct comparison, and it's different from a simile. The function of satire. The role of satire is to ridicule or criticize those vices in society which the writer considers a threat to civilization. The writer considers it his obligation to expose these vices for the betterment of humanity. Therefore, the function of satire is not to make others laugh at persons or ideas they make fun of. It intends at warning the public against and changing their opinions about the prevailing corruption in society. A novel that is a typical example of satire is George Orwell's Animal Farm, where the pigs take over, but it's about the Russian Revolution. So, but it's also being used in poetry. Euphemism. Euphemism is a polite expression used in place of words or phrases that otherwise might be considered harsh or unpleasant to hear. Some examples would be, he fell off the back of a truck instead of it was stolen. It was an ethnic cleansing instead of genocide. Turn a trick instead of engage in prostitution. Negative patient outcome means that the person died. Relocation center instead of a prison camp. And collateral damage instead of accidental deaths. Euphemism would also be, for example, he kicked the bucket, also for being dead, and there are so many different ones. For the exam, you need to give a definition of euphemism and give some examples. Antithesis learning, literal meaning, opposite. It is a rhetorical device in which two opposite ideas are put together in a sentence to achieve a contrasting effect. Emphasizes the idea of contrast by parallel structures of the contrasted phrases or clauses. The structures of phrases and clauses are similar in order to draw the attention of the listeners or the readers. For example, setting foot on the moon may be a small step for a man, but a giant leap for mankind. How to detect innuendo in literature. To detect innuendo, one has to read between the lines of the writer in a given case and draw out implication, conclusions that are meant to be inferred by a reader or an audience. This is done by reconstructing the argument as a construction to a conversation, a conversationalized type of dialogue in which the speaker and hearer or the reader are supposedly engaged. In such a context, speaker and hearer may be presumed to share common knowledge and expectations and cooperatively take part in the conversation at its different stages, by taking turns making kinds of moves called speech acts, for example, questioning and replying, asking for clarification or justification of an assertion. I did see in the past with the exams when I mark that the students find it difficult to actually read between the lines. You need to understand, and it's also a skill, you need to practice it. Go through different poems, try and understand and analyze the different lines and see what is meant. Because usually in poetry it is not a straightforward saying. Yes, there are, but there are many lines that tries to tell you something different. And the only way to get better at this is to actually analyze different poems. And usually the Bes Eng32 students loses their marks mostly with the literature part. Hyperbole is a figure of speech that involves an exaggeration of ideas for the sake of emphasis. It is a device that we employ in our day-to-day speech. For instance, when you meet a friend after a long time, you say, "It's been ages since I last saw you." You may not have met him for 3 or 4 hours or a day, but the use of the word ages exaggerates this statement to add emphasis to your weight. Therefore, a hyperbole is an unreal exaggeration to emphasize the real situation. Some other common hyperbole examples are given below. My grandmother is as old as the hills. Your suitcase weighs a ton. She is as heavy as an elephant. I'm dying of shame. So, and this is usually used in poetry and literature to bring in color and to make it more wow. Synecdoche. Synecdoche is figurative, not literal speech. That is, its meaning is not to be taken for at surface value. Synecdoche is a type of figurative language that uses a part of something to mean the whole thing. For example, those wheels are awesome. Those wheels are awesome means your car. This example substitutes the part wheels for the whole car. The wheels refer to the entire car. It is not the wheels that are awesome, it is the car that is awesome. Synecdoche is a type of symbolism. One thing represents something else. Using synecdoche draws attention to the part instead of the whole. Synecdoche can be used as a rhetorical device. It is used to sound more colloquial and to mirror everyday language. This helps a speaker connect with his audience to achieve his purpose. It is often used to mimic spoken language. Yes, and we are done. So, if you need any assistance or you feel you need to have a little bit more explanation on some of the topics, please SMS me. I will get back to you as soon as possible. Good luck with the exams, and yes, please focus more on the literary and the devices, the poetry bit for the exams, because I do ask quite longer questions and questions with more marks there. And all the best.